Listing optimization is a critical aspect of success for every seller, but there are tricks of the trade when it comes to knowing what to optimize, how to optimize, and what to optimize for. In today's episode, we're going to break down the best kept listing optimization secrets of 7- and 8-figure brands. I'm Shannon Roddy, head of business development here at Avenue 7 Media, and today's host of the Day 2 podcast. With me, I have our very own Liz LaVallee, Director of Client Operations here at Avenue 7. Formerly, Liz was the Director of Digital Marketing and Online Marketplaces at Vermont Teddy Bear and Pajamagram, where she helped grow their business significantly over the past 15 years. And today, she's going to be sharing some of those listing optimization secrets with you on the podcast. Liz, welcome to the Day 2 podcast.
Thank you so much, Shannon. So happy to be here.
So Liz, before we get started, I just want to say what a pleasure it has been to work with you for the past, I think it's 3 months now.
Yep.
3 months. You have brought and added so much value to our team. The way you approach things, not only your personality, your character, but also your expertise is just this wonderful blend and just makes our entire team and our entire company better. So I just want to say thank you first and brag on you a little bit before we dive into the content.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That is so nice to hear. I really, really appreciate that. And likewise, I have been just on cloud 9 since I've joined the team, and the passion and collaboration that this team has, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. So I'm just so happy to be a part of Avenue 7. Thank you for your kind words.
Before we dive into the specifics, the first question I want to ask you is, how does a 7- and 8-figure brand owner think about listing optimization in a way that differs from a smaller brand or seller that's struggling to gain market share? What's the mindset difference?
Yeah, I think the mindset difference is really taking the time to identify a goal, starting with a goal, coming up with a plan, and determining your metrics and your tracking. And then rinsing and repeating. So I think it's really just more of a holistic strategy versus, one-off pot shotting.
Is there a way beyond that process that more advanced brand owners are prioritizing listing optimization, do you feel like? Are they looking at it from different angles? Are they looking at more in depth than another seller might in order to eke out every little bit that they can to improve that listing, to improve performance across their brand or across their brands on the platform?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the mindset part of it is having the mindset that, hey, a listing is never done. It's never complete. It can always be made better. And it's an everyday thing. It's not an event. It's not something I do every 6 months or once a year or once every 3 years. It's constant, and it's just part of our daily management of our Amazon sales channel. It's just part of the daily strategy. So I would say that's one thing, having that kind of a mindset. And then kind of going back to first starting with your goal. It's really hard to get to your destination. It's really hard to know what path to take to get there if you don't know where you're going. And so I kind of like to break down the goal into trying to choose one of three. And once you have that, you can know what tactics should you take to achieve that goal, because there are different types of listing optimizations. And so one of them is your goal could be traffic, increasing traffic. One could be increasing conversion rate. And then the third bucket that I like to bucket things into is increasing customer clarity or satisfaction. And there's definitely, as with everything in Amazon, there's overlap and there's synergies. Those things don't exist in isolation. They're not completely separate, but there definitely are some distinct tactics underneath each one of those. So start by asking yourself, like, what's the biggest problem with my product or my listing that I want to focus on first? Is it which one of those three things? And then we can talk more about choosing which tactics to start with.
Liz, brilliant job breaking that down, not just into one holistic aspect or bucket of listing optimization or pillar, but 3 distinct pillars. So let's just kind of cover those in orders. First, you mentioned conversion rate. Why is conversion rate so important? And what are some specific strategies brand owners can use to improve or increase the conversion rate?
Right. So conversion rate is one of the most important metrics. I know there's so many metrics to be watching when you're running an Amazon business, but I really believe conversion rate is a key one to keep an eye on. because it directly impacts your margin. There's so many traffic strategies that people like to talk about, and traffic is super important, of course. And there's a variety. You've done a number of podcast episodes digging into SEO and paid advertising and all of the external traffic, all of that. But at the end of the day, that traffic is not going to do very much for you if your page isn't going to convert that customer. So that's why conversion rate is so important, and how to get that. You're investing a lot of time and money in driving traffic. The way you get that to pay off and the way you can improve your margins, improve your profitability, is by making sure that your page is high converting. Otherwise, it's kind of a waste. The second half of your question was, okay, I identify conversion rate's my main goal with my optimization. What should I do? The areas that I would focus on for that are your supporting images, secondary images, some people like to call them. Sometimes we refer to them as our infographics. Those have a huge impact on conversion rate. They're above the fold, and people like to look at images. They absorb information better than simply reading. So those images are extremely important. I don't want to downplay the importance of copy. You want to take a look at the messaging in your copy and make sure it's compelling. That can also impact conversion rate. I do think the images are more important. And then, of course, down below the fold, we have some important areas with our brand story and our A+ content, and tactics that you can apply there that will help conversion rate.
I'm curious, Liz, what role do experiments, play and A/B testing play in Amazon? I know Amazon has Amazon experiments that you can A/B test on that. There's also some great third-party tools like PickFood that allow us to do some testing ahead of time. How important is A/B testing in your mind? And how much of A/B testing, how much of it, blah, 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 how much of that is a part of your process and your methodology that you use?
Yeah, A/B testing is very important, and there's a few different ways we can test, but it's a huge part of my process. It always has been. I've always come from kind of a data-driven mindset to e-commerce, and I have definitely have lots of experiences, lots of examples from my past where me and my team would place a really strong bet on the version that we thought was better, and the data told us otherwise. So and that's the other part of A/B testing. Like, don't get too attached to the version that you personally think is better. But and when those results come back, I think it's just human nature to say, no, that can't be right. Let's test that again. There's no way that image won against that one. But I've been humbled in my past by having some examples. And when I think back on some of those examples, where the one that I thought was going to win didn't. I think a lot of times it's because I was thinking about what I liked, and I'm not necessarily the customer, right? I was not necessarily the target demographic of the brand. Yeah. And nor were my colleagues who put together the test. So let the data guide you and make decisions. And I'm a big fan of the manage experiments feature that's right within Seller Central. Makes it really easy to A/B test. And there's actually, Shannon, did you see the new feature that rolled out just in the last couple of weeks in manage experiments? Have you heard about that yet?
No, but I did see. I'm not in the accounts as much as I used to be, but I did notice that at Amazon Accelerate, they already announced a session where they're going to be rolling out and unveiling some new features. So I'm not sure if they're already releasing them in beta or if they're going to be announcing even more. But tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the back end.
Well, that's cool. I hope there is more to come next month at Accelerate. But the one feature that our team saw roll out about 10 days ago was the ability to A/B test supporting images. So up until this month, the only image test you could run was a main image test. But now you can run the supporting images, which I was just saying they're hugely important. So I was really happy to see that. And what we're kind of seeing across our client base is that feature seems to only be available on listings that do not have variation, that don't have a parent-child variation relationship. So I'm not sure if Amazon's going to be rolling it out soon to listings that have variations or not, or maybe that's what they'll talk about more next month. But we're seeing it in some accounts, and have already run a few tests on it this week.
And then what about A+ content? Can we A/B test A+ content?
Yes.
Within Amazon and sort of test both of them at the same time, run it, see which one performs better, and choose that one?
Yep. Yep, and that's really easy to do. And Amazon, they'll let you know when the test is statistically significant, which is really important, making sure that you're not ending a test too soon before you have enough data. Just because version A has 4 orders and version B has 5 orders, like that's not enough data to make a call. So Amazon will tell you when it's reached a probability factor that's high enough to end the test, and it makes it really easy for you to just roll out the winner, publish the winner. Right from the testing page. And yeah, when you're testing A/B or when you're testing A+ content, you can test completely different versions against each other. You can, if you have premium, you can test a premium A+ versus a standard, or you could just make some small changes too. You can just add a comparison chart and test the version with or without it. So it's very flexible. There's lots of options.
What about when there's something that there isn't sort of an easy A/B test experiment that you can put both in there and run it, like maybe a product title or even the order of the product features, for example? Mm-hmm. Are you looking at data simply before and after that time period, noting when you made the change, and then kind of looking at the before and after? And I would say, how long do you run it? But I think we've seen the similar situation with Amazon Experience. Sometimes they'd say, okay, you have to run it for this many weeks before you get data. But in reality, it's more about velocity of traffic, because one seller could get that traffic in a day, another seller could get that traffic in 2 months. And so we've encouraged Amazon's teams to say, hey, let's look at less at the time frame and more about the amount of quality traffic that could determine that, because I'd love to be able to get data back within a week if we have the ability to and move forward. But what's your sort of thinking and process for testing some of those other things that don't have an experiment functionality built into Amazon?
Yeah, that's spot on. That those types of tests generally need to be what I would call like a time period over time period test. And there is no magic answer, to your point, Shannon, about everyone says, well, how long do I need to run it for? And unfortunately, it's one of those, well, it depends, right? To your point, like if you're selling 10 units a day from that listing, you've got to run it a lot longer than if you're selling 10,000 units a day. You might be able to get a read one day over one day. So it's more about the amount of data that you can collect versus the amount of time. Yeah, so if it's something like title that you can't A/B test and manage experiments, what I would recommend is identifying a time that is a good time to run that test. And by a good time, I mean a time of year where you can commit to not making a lot of other changes on that listing. You want to isolate a single variable. That's kind of testing 101. So if you're planning on rolling out like a new sponsored display strategy, or you're planning on starting DSP, or you're planning on changing the parent-child relationship, like you can't do that at the same time that you're testing the title. To only change that one thing. And then also be mindful of like what time of year it is. You might not want to run it really close to Prime Day. You might not want to run it really close to Cyber Monday, because those types of external macro events are going to skew your data as well. So choose kind of a quiet, consistent time of year, choose a single variable, and then make a note of when you made that change. And I think, again, we were saying, there is no magic answer to how long, but I think a good rule of thumb is 30 days pre, 30 days post. Completely depends on your sales velocity. I would say if you're looking at the total time period, like the time before the change and the time after the change, and you don't have a total of at least like 50 units sold during that time period, it's probably not going to be statistically significant. So that's just another benchmark, because the time is dependent on your volume.
Yeah, I mean, I've told brands that I used to coach previously under marketplace seller courses was, if you don't have 100 orders in a time period, typically in a month, then your conversion rate can be thrown off so easily by just a handful of orders that it's really not a reliable statistic at that point. So I think, again to your point, if you don't have reliable data to start with, if it's insignificant, you've got to start by actually getting more traffic so that you've got some reliable data there. But I love what you just said. And audience, please, take that to heart. Make sure that you're alleviating any other obstacles or things that would impact your conversion rate, like launching the second half of your experience right before Black Friday, because that will significantly throw it off, staying away from the Prime days, or even, the high peak seasonality, because, yes, you're playing with real data, and yes, you're playing with a live listing. So you just want to factor that in. If it's at the height of your sales seasonality, the peak of your seasonality, that might not be the best time to optimize. And so if you can do it before then, and that way, when you get to your peak, you've already optimized it and you're good to go.
Yep. And also if you are a highly seasonal brand, the risk of messing around with your listings during your peak is also greater as well. While you might be able to collect data more quickly, there's definitely, some consideration to be made about, do you really want to be making a lot of changes during a peak season?
The first pillar that you mentioned is listing optimization to increase or improve traffic. And that kind of plays into the second part of conversion rate. Talk for a few minutes about how you improve traffic with listing optimization. Oftentimes people think of the listing as sort of this static, passive thing, but there's things that you can do to actually increase the traffic to that listing from the optimization standpoint. Talk a little bit about that. Let's dive into that for a minute.
Yeah. And this works really well. As you just mentioned, there are some listings that aren't even getting enough traffic to be able to run a valid conversion rate optimization test. So tactics for that, if your main problem is you're not getting enough traffic, it's really main image, title, and then your SEO copy on the rest of your listing. Those are the three things that could really that you could test and play around with to try and increase traffic. And I love starting with main image. That is what is going to get people to click in on your listing. And there's lots you can do there, and people don't realize how much you can do there. I think people, Shannon, would you agree, kind of think like, what do you mean? It's my main image is my main image. Like, it's my product. Like, what else can I do with it? And it's got to be on a white background, and I'm not allowed to show anything else. So that's all I got.
There's so much creativity that you can do within TOS. And I'll be honest, I even think there's some things that you can do that are a little bit in the gray area of TOS, because we're not talking about manipulating reviews. We're not talking about trying to hack the system. We're trying to talk about how do we improve the customer experience and ultimately make Amazon more money.
Yep.
The brand and make more money.
Great rule of thumb. Like, if what you're considering doing is potentially a slight gray area, but it's better for the customer, and it's better for you, and it's better for Amazon, that's different than some other black hat or super gray area tactics that are like manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, there's some categories where they clearly allow a lifestyle image, and other ones where the style guide says, only show the product, no people, no lifestyle, no background. But you look at the category, we saw this with one of our clients who sold a sports product. Everybody in the category had a person in there. Every single product image had a human in it. And you just think Amazon's clearly not regulating it, but it's so important for this specific product to show the customer in the primary image how it works, that it actually is a better customer experience. The click-through rate went through. And, it was interesting. We used a combination, Liz. We used PickFu to run a variety of different options, a handful of different options. And then there was two options that were fairly close in terms of sort of the winners. So there was definitely, they were definitely head and shoulders above the other ones. So we ran the A/B experiments off Amazon to get that data really quick. You can get it in 30 minutes. Then we took the two best results from PickFu, put them into Amazon experiments, and the one that won second on PickFu actually wound up being better converting on Amazon with the real data. And so they were both very close, but there's an element where there's multiple iterations of A/B experiments that you can do. But the click-through rate, you're absolutely dead on. Whether it's an ad or whether it's just inorganic results, that main product image can just appeal to customers. And I would even say there's an element where it's not just about how good the image is, it's also about how different that image is. If your image looks exactly the same as everybody else's, I love what Rick Cesari says, different is better than better. It's not just about being higher quality, but you've got to be able to, if everybody else is red, how do you be green or pink or orange? Like, be different to really stand out on that detail page to get more traffics and clicks to the page.
Absolutely. It's a crowded marketplace. You've got to stand out, right? So, be better and different.
There you go. I love that.
I love that strategy of that you deployed of kind of using PickFu first and then going to manage your experiments. And that's really interesting that the number 2 from PickFu ended up winning. I think that that's a great strategy. I have had similar experiences where what the customer says they like better isn't necessarily sometimes what they actually do. I have an experience where, we've done surveys and focus groups, where customers say that they won't buy something unless it has free shipping. And then we ran free shipping A/B testing on our website, and the paid shipping actually won, or there wasn't as high of a conversion rate. So sometimes, getting a read on customer sentiment and like what they say they like, it's not actually what in practice they end up doing.
It's a good point. I do think it's possible to get a concept of here's definitely some bad examples, here's some better examples. In one case, I ran a PickFu poll yesterday, and it actually came back 50-50, which was very encouraging to me because it then meant that I could go pick and I didn't have to worry if I was going to, sacrifice something huge. So in terms of the title, the way I look at it, the title holds 2 prominent aspects where the image there's no SEO value in the image. It's just click-through rate, right? In terms of traffic, from a traffic standpoint. The title holds SEO value for discoverability, but also click-through, as it shows up, the first part of the title shows up in search results, whether it's desktop or mobile. What are some things that brands should take into consideration for title optimization specifically on driving more traffic?
Yeah, so I think it's that finding that perfect balance, right? You want to have relevant keywords in your title. You want to have SEO rich keywords, high volume keywords in your title, but you also can have some selling aspects in your title. There might be something really special about your product, a benefit that it provides or a problem that it solves. And the words that you would use to describe that might not be the highest search volume, but they might still be very helpful to have in your title because they might help with the click-through rate. Even so, they won't provide the traffic value, but as you're describing, they could help with the click-through rate value and they could help with the conversion rate value on the page. So yeah, title's wearing a lot of hats and is definitely worth testing. And you can test title in Manage Your Experiments, and it will split the traffic and do a true A/B test and tell you which version converted better. And then you might want to take that one that has the best conversion rate and then run it against another title for traffic and click-through rate, right? Because it's hitting hits all of those metrics. So you don't want to just optimize it for one.
It's been interesting. We've seen Amazon across categories reducing the number of characters that either they say they allow or recommend or actually in some cases restricting. And it'll be interesting to see how brands react to that. Is Amazon actually going to be suppressing listings across the board, across all categories, if they limit it to, say, 50 characters as opposed to 100 or 200? And then, again, I think Amazon's going after some broad data that says, well, we think shorter titles convert. But, from my experience, what I've seen, sometimes shorter titles convert because of the brand equity. So you could have a 2-pack of Heinz ketchup that has no other SEO, no value proposition or anything, and it converts better because it's Heinz ketchup.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you have any high-level thoughts or recommendations as sellers become more limited with that space. What's the trade-off in terms of SEO, value proposition? Where would you put your focus if you're really, really restricted, especially if you have a long brand name? Any thoughts or recommendations there?
Yeah, something like 50 characters is not a lot to work with a lot of times, especially if you have a long brand name, as you said, like it's the brand name and then like 1 or 2 words describing my title. If you have to put a size and color at the end, it very quickly eats up your 50 characters. So I would say, you need, at that point, you need to really prioritize and go with the product. Like, why did you introduce that product? Ask yourself that. Like, I introduced this product so that I could get it to rank on this phrase. It was designed for this niche. Okay, make sure that is in your title if you are facing a character limitation.
The last pillar that you mentioned, Liz, is listing optimization that increases customer clarity and customer satisfaction. So before we dive into specifics again, can you take a minute to explain to our listeners and viewers exactly what that means? And then we'll talk about how we can actually go about honing that messaging to deliver better value to customers, not just when they purchase, but after they purchase, the whole customer experience?
Yeah. So sometimes, when we're initially crafting our listings, we're really thinking about our selling points, our selling benefits, as we absolutely should be. What are your unique selling propositions? What are your features, your function, most importantly, your benefits, describing your product. And if I'm imagining it's a new product launch, you're a few months into that launch, you might start you're going to be getting information from customers. You're going to be getting reviews. You're going to be getting questions and answers. You're going to be getting seller feedback. You're going to be getting returns, and you're going to have some information in your returns reports. And you might find, you probably will find, that there are some themes emerging out of those that are some common customer, maybe points of confusion or just questions. And that is what I'm talking about with listing optimization to address that. If you are seeing several customers are all kind of asking a particular question or confused about a particular thing or returning for a particular reason, you have a huge opportunity to address that in the listing, give them that information up front, and you will improve your star rating, you'll lower your return rate, and you'll just all have a better product. And the increased star rating goes back to the other two metrics, right? This is why it's all synergistic. You'll have a higher traffic and higher conversion rate. So it's all related.
Right. Higher click-through rate, higher conversion. One thing I want to point out that's so interesting is there is a balance here between listing optimization for conversion and listing optimization for customer clarity.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of we'll call them gurus out there on some of the YouTube channels and podcasts. They focus so much on the listing optimization to sell with little regard to the customer experience after the fact. The problem with that is you can overpromise and end up, if the product under-delivers, your conversion rate may increase by 5% or 10%, and sales skyrocket, but all of a sudden your returns start coming in and the negative reviews start coming in, and you've got to weight both of those. And again, to use a principle that I learned from Andy Stanley, it can become a tension to manage, not a problem to solve, right? So sometimes there's not a specific problem that you're solving. You're managing that tension of, yes, we want to increase the conversion rate, but we also have to do it in a way that benefits the customer long term from a customer experience. A really good example that I had, this was several years ago. We worked with a company that sold a hand broom, and the number one comment, either in returns or negative reviews, was it's too small. Well, there's not a product that's too small. It's just smaller than they thought it was going to be. And some customers explained it that way. Well, it was just a lot smaller than I thought it would be. So we sent the product to our photographer and said, can you take a picture of this product in your hand holding it? And we just made that our secondary image. Just dress it right head on, right up front. And the second we posted that image, we never got that complaint again. We never got that return reason again. We never got a negative review again, because people could clearly see how big the product was. Any other examples that you think sort of solidify that point of helping brands think through that customer experience, not just when they buy it, but as they use it over time?
Absolutely. I think that's a great example, and it can be as simple as that. What we're really doing here is we're trying to set a good customer expectation, an accurate customer expectation, manage their expectation. We don't want them to be surprised when they get the product about anything. Oh, I didn't know I was going to need batteries. I didn't know it was going to be this size. I didn't know that it was this type of fabric. It wasn't explained to me. And sometimes, things are omitted just unintentionally, like, oh, I didn't realize, so that's why listen to what your customers are saying. But yeah, I have lots of examples. I have examples of in apparel, not fully describing like the weight of the fabric or the fit of how it was going to fit you. And seeing comments of people being, oh, a little surprised. This was a little bit more flowy of a top than I thought it was going to be. We definitely have seen some examples recently in our client base. Things like, I didn't realize that batteries were required, not included. Okay, we can easily add that into an infographic, and it's not something we should hide. Somebody might have said, well, I didn't want to mention that because I thought maybe people wouldn't want to buy it then. It's like, well, you're actually doing yourself more harm than good there, because you got a 2-star rating and your return rate is higher than it needs to be, and that's costing you a lot.
Yeah. It goes right back to mentality. No, I was actually thinking about that. I bought something for my son, and the second image was this giant infographic that had like a red X through the double A's and said, does not include the batteries that you need to run this product. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I need to go.
Yeah.
But they actually did a good job of saying, we recommend you buy these batteries. And, you can provide a link to that in your A+ content. Like there's ways that you can do it. I want to touch on something that you mentioned, which is subjectivity.
Yeah.
It can be really challenging when it's not a technical thing of, is this product compatible with, product B or product C or with this type of cable? That's important. I bought a monitor cable this morning or a couple of days ago, realized I had actually bought the wrong one. And the new one that I was looking at, they had a really good job of showing the infograph saying, here's the 3 different types of cables. It's not this one. It's not this one. This is the fit that you're buying. You're like, oh, that was smart. If I'd seen that on the other one, I might have actually checked first before I bought it. But there's certain things like apparel of how warm it is or how heavy it is or how loose or how tight it is. That's a little more subjective. Any recommendations there in terms of how you might address that? Even just saying, and I've seen this on some listings that says, look, if you're not sure, size down, right? Choose this, right? Or if you're not sure, size up, because based on the experience that we've had customers explain and describe to us, we found that they need a slightly larger fit. The size is sort of run large. Any insight in terms of how you deal with subjectivity? Because it is challenging. It's really challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of times it's personal preference, and it can be frustrating sometimes because for every customer that you get that says, "Oh, that I don't like the loose fit," you get another customer that says, "I don't like how it was a tight fit." So it's like you can't please everybody, but what you can do is just be clear. And images go a long way, right? Images speak 1,000 words, so you can show how something fits on a few different body types. You can do that with drawings as well, or like silhouette, and just as descriptive as possible about the weight of things, both in and make your messaging scannable too, because these are the sorts of details that can easily be lost in a slew of a lot of long copy. So make sure that you're crafting your copy in a way that it's scannable, because that's what people are doing. They're scanning it. So if you aren't putting in an image and you're putting it somewhere else in more of like in the bullets or in the copy of an A+ or something like that, bulletize as much as possible and make it succinct and scannable.
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of experience. I really enjoy when a brand comes to us or had previously came to me and said, it doesn't matter how many times I say it, customers still have the same problem. I'm like, great, let's dig in, because I call it pre-customer service, right? This whole aspect is pre-customer service. I'm like, stop trying to tell it to them on the 5th module of the A+ content. Let's show them how to use it in the video ad that gets them to the listing.
Yep.
Right? Let's show it to them in the brand ad custom image, showing them how to use the product before they buy it. If that's really the number one issue, make it front and center. Highlight it in every, highlight it in the features, highlight it in the images, highlight it in the A+ content.
Yeah, I love that.
And even documents. Amazon allows you to upload documents, PDF documents, attach them to your listing. If you have a more technical product, highly recommend you do that, but don't just put it there. Reference it in an infographic and say, hey, scroll down and download our PDF that will actually allow you to get all the specs for this product.
Without a doubt, going that extra mile to make sure the customer is going to get what they expected and is going to be happy with it will do a lot for you in the long run. It's a lot harder to dig yourself out of a handful of poor reviews. You're in a much bigger problem when you get yourself in that scenario.
It's a great point. So I ordered shoes for my kids on Zappos, which is of course owned by Amazon, and I love because they had a PDF document. I think there's actually on their website, but they may also have it on Amazon. But you download a PDF page to measure your kids' feet, but to make sure that you print it out at the right size. Sometimes your printer shrinks it and then you're measuring the wrong thing and then you get the wrong size shoe. They had 3 sections on there, one for a quarter, one for a credit card, and one for a can of Coke or soda.
Oh.
So that when you print it out, you could put a quarter. So everybody's got at least one of those, credit card or a quarter or a soda can. And you could put it on there to make sure the paper printed out the right size. And then when you measured your kid's feet, it was really clear that it was the right size.
Yep.
And I was just like, that is great customer service.
Yes.
It's a great customer experience.
Make it easy for people.
Make it easy. Make it easy. That's the tip from the 7-8 figure seller. Liz, we didn't really talk about it, but I do believe it's so important for traffic, for conversion, and for customer experience. Let's talk a little bit about video, because video, I feel like, is so powerful in today's medium.
Yeah.
Facebook always says, like, by 2028, 99% of Facebook will just be videos, right? Because it's just the most consumable type of content. But let's talk about video for a few minutes from those three different angles, from traffic, conversion rate, and customer experience.
Yeah, I think video plays a role in all of them. Certainly from a traffic standpoint, it's not so much your listing video, but more some of the video advertising opportunities you have. But from a conversion rate standpoint and customer clarity in terms of listing optimizations, the video can be huge. And that's a great way. We were talking earlier about that subjectivity of, like, how do you get that across? Video is a great way to do that because you can show it in a variety of ways. You can show it, you can address what size it is. You can show it, people using it in people's hands, use cases. And I would say my philosophy on video on the product page is, it's similar to my philosophy for your supporting images. It's like, highlight your benefits, highlight the problem that the product is solving for the customer. Don't get too overcomplicated. Stay short. Have some words, have some text in your video, but not too much, because people need to be able to scan it and read it quickly. Don't clutter it with too much text, and really just hit home. Like, here's why you should buy this product. Here's why it's better, and here's what it's going to do for you. And show it being used.
Yeah, and I agree. And the one thing I would say in terms of traffic is, if you take those product videos and include SEO in the titles, your product videos can actually show up on your competitors' listings, especially if they don't have videos. So I think product videos are highly underutilized by many sellers. And again, we could make that a whole separate episode, which we probably will. There's so many great things about video, but make sure you add SEO to your videos. Just like with the listing optimization, make sure that you A/B test and optimize that thumbnail for click-through rate, right? And same with the title. It's like, that's what makes somebody click on a video and watch it. Not above the fold where you're seeing it below the product images, but below, under that section, as customers are scrolling through trying to make their purchase decision. They're looking at the A+ content, they're looking at the reviews. Then you see these, slated product videos. It is a great opportunity to, as you said, answer customer questions, talk about, how do I assemble this, or what size, should I choose, for this product. And SEO in the title can help with the traffic. And then the click-through rate really to the video is really, helped by that quality thumbnail.
Yep.
So
love it. And then absolutely to your point, you can reuse it in different video slots, throughout Amazon, of which there is no shortage, and they keep on introducing more places to use them, right? So
okay, Liz, my last question, we talked a little bit about prioritization, and you mentioned that at the beginning. In some cases, if you don't have any traffic to your listing, probably need to focus on traffic first. Once you have traffic, it really makes sense to focus on conversion rate, especially if your conversion rate is low. And then lastly, the customer experience. Sometimes, again, say you're launching a new product, traffic is obviously first. If you don't have traffic, you don't have a conversion rate to optimize. Once you have a conversion rate, you don't even know what the customer experience is, because they haven't even had a chance to buy it, leave a review, or potentially return it, which you hope they don't. But once you kind of look at all those, there's sort of that prioritization of it. And then, as you said, never ending, relentless optimization. So my last question is really around metrics and cadence. What metrics can brand owners look at to gauge these really critical elements of listing optimization? And then how often should a brand owner seller be looking at those metrics and making changes to improve them?
Yep. So I would say,
it's a loaded question. Big loaded question.
Okay. So what metric you want to use, depends on what you're optimizing towards too. So it does go back to, am I looking at my traffic? Am I looking at my conversion rate, or am I looking at my customer clarity and satisfaction? So if you're performing a tactic that you are trying to impact the traffic on the listing, the metrics would be total sessions. You can also look at advertising click-through rate. I would say that those are the two big ones for traffic. Would you have any to add?
No, I mean, from a traffic standpoint, sessions is definitely the way to go. Page views is less relevant. Sessions is really a much more defined one for basically the number of visits by an Amazon customer in a 24-hour period. So I think you're absolutely right. Click-through rate and then sessions.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't forgetting one. And then conversion rate, well, that speaks for itself. You're looking at your conversion rate metric, which is in your business reports, and Amazon calls it unit session percentage, which is a mouthful for conversion rate. So that's your metric there. And then if you're doing a tactic where your goal is to improve customer satisfaction, the two I would look at are your product rating, your star rating, and also I'd keep an eye on your return rates, because that's how you can start saving. Returns are expensive, but you can if you can tick that return rate down a little bit, you can count up the dollars that you saved through some listing optimization tactics. Yeah. So those are the main metrics. And then in terms of how often or a cadence, I would say constantly be working on your listing, but only be changing one thing at a time, right? So it's all about prioritization, right? As brand owners, as e-commerce sellers, as Amazon sellers, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. There's 1,000 levers that I could be pulling today. So it's, what's the biggest problem that you're trying to solve? Choose your first test, let it run until statistical significance, like you said, what we were saying, 50 orders, 100 orders. Learn from that, and then identify your next tests. It might be a variation of based on what you learned with that first one. It might be something completely different, and just keep on going one test at a time. And what you're doing there is you're just getting a little bit better every day.
I love that philosophy. I've listened to James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and he talks about that I think it was a French cycling team, just 1% better every day, get 1% better every day. I'm just going to put this out. It feels overwhelming. It feels like a lot of things to pay attention to all at the same time, which is why we have a team of over 100 plus that handle this, in all these different verticals. It is a lot to tackle, and it's why we love working with our clients and brands. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed just listening to this episode, feel free to click the link, book a call. We'll talk about how we can take some of this off your plate and help you do all these things at a scalable level. But the one thing I was going to say, Liz, in terms of the second metric for conversion rate is there are some products and clients that we've worked with where customers just tend to buy more than one. And that can significantly throw off the unit session percentage, because again, we talked about what the session means. The unit session just means how many units per session on average does somebody order. Now, overall, it doesn't matter, but we've had clients where occasionally someone will buy 10 or 20 of them at a time, which can, again, sort of drastically, throw off those metrics. So you've got to be aware of that. And really the way to look at it is, or perhaps a better way to look at it, and it's silly that Amazon doesn't give this to you, but it's basically dividing the number of orders with the number of sessions. And so because if customers are routinely buying more than one or occasionally buying more than one in large quantities, that unit session percentage can get thrown off. So what you really want to know is, how many orders do I get with this number of sessions? So you really have to tweak the metrics based on your business, based on your model, based on your brand, so that you're looking at it. But to your point, you have to have metrics that you're looking at. You have to have goals and KPIs that you're looking to improve.
Yep, that's a great point. So it's more of an order session percentage, normalizing some of those oddities that can cause a big skew in your data. Just going back to your overwhelm point, it can be overwhelming. And I feel like what I've most commonly seen is it seems so overwhelming. So people do one of two things. One, they do nothing because they're like in paralysis. They're scared. You don't know where to start, right? It's like, oh my gosh, so daunting.
That's my garage. I don't even want to go. I don't want to go in it.
I don't want to touch it. I don't know how to get started, right? And it's like sure. That's one. Or the other thing I see is kind of the opposite. People just kind of like start haphazardly doing everything, and they're changing everything on their listing, and they're running multiple tests at a time, and it just gets really messy. And it's like, whoa, wait, what is your goal? What is your strategy? What's your hypothesis? What's your metric? Like, let's break this down and come up with a plan here. So kind of two opposite spectrums that I've seen, and I feel like most people kind of fall into one of those two. But that and yes, absolutely. That's how our team kind of like wait, let's break it down, come up with a plan. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. It's going into the emergency room and doing that analysis and assessment, saying, okay, prioritize, and focus. The last thing I was going to say, Liz, the one scenario where you might sort of throw the bath out or the baby out with the bathwater is sometimes, a client shows up and the listing is just terrible. It's not converting at all. the traffic is horrible and we can just see they're not utilizing any best practices. In those situations, we don't have to do one tweak at a time. You can kind of just throw the baby out with the bathwater, dump the listing, create a fully new optimized listing, and kind of start over from scratch. So, that's the only thing I'd say. Similar for campaigns. If a campaign is operating at a 400% A cost and just bleeding money, probably not a lot to salvage there.
Yeah,
if it's not set up or structured well. So there are a few scenarios where you say, wipe the slate, let's start over. There's not much here that we're going to mess up or screw up. It can only get better using best practices and what we call our AV7 ways. So Liz, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Any last thoughts, questions, recommendations, or advice or tips for our audience before we leave them today?
I think my parting advice is put yourself in the shoes of your customer and follow their journey. It's a great way to start. Go to Amazon and search for your key phrase that you're trying to win on, and take a look. What does everybody look like on page one? And click into your listing, click into some other listings. Just start there. Think about your customer. If you do that, you will walk out of that exercise with a laundry list of ideas of what to test first.
Again, it just brings up an idea for a completely different episode, because we didn't even talk about really messaging and targeting your audience and customer sentiment analysis. So we'll save it for another day. But Liz, thank you so much for being on. Again, if you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, highly encourage you to visit us at day2podcast.com, day2podcast.com. And if you know anybody else who would benefit from this amazing episode, please share with them. Liz, thank you again for being on the Day 2 podcast again. You will be on again. We love having you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Shannon.
Looking forward to our next episode.